Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, The Leaves of Autumn. Hey. How are you doing? This might be a bit weird, but a mutual friend of ours suggested that I try this. You know, to exorcise any demons and whatnot. But I guess what's really ironic is that the two of us are involved. I've always hated writing letters, much preferring to let my head just go wild. And you've always preferred things on the computer for safer keeping. But hey, life is tough. And then you die. That's enough of the pussyfooting, I guess. I mean, of course there's a reason for my writings. The times between now and that little incident have been tough for me, and I know they've been tough for you, but I guess that's only human. Through the time though, I've always maintained the idea that I was wrong, that I was to blame, that every little thing that tripped us up were because of me, and to an extent, I'd be right. I let my emotions get the best of me. I let anger rule my heart. I scared the people away. I scared your parents. And it was all because I never learned to control myself. You know, it's funny. I always tried to blame it on a crappy upbringing. What with my mother disappearing before I can remember and my dad being a drunkard. But I guess I can't ladle all of it onto them. There were other factors. First of all, the type of people I decided to hang around with. The type of people who resented any type of authority regardless and would do as they pleased because they just felt like it. The type of people who felt like they would feel no repercussions. I'm sorry that I managed to get you dragged into all of that. Secondly, you've got my unpredictability. I guess one day Quack's going to come up to me and tell me that I've got manic depressive disorder or something, and chances are I'd agree with them. The sudden swings in me scared people off. They thought, or should I say knew, I was unstable. It was tough, I guess. One moment I'd be king of the world, and the next some punk would come about trying to tip me off my throne, and then they'd be eating dirt. It scared me, but I guess it all started improving once you came around. I was calmer. I was happier. I was at peace. Then you've got my will to explore. I could never sit still, and despite knowing that it sort of entertained you, I know it was hard, the constant change of scenery, all the little unwanted surprises like spiders and lizards. Thanks for hanging through it all though. Finally you've got my little obsessions. In my defense, they helped keep me concentrated, but it was the stuff like how your blue highlights just shone in the pale moonlight. How you always had one shoulder up and the other down. You know, the little stuff. It would have been hard. I mean, I'm not exactly subtle or anything. I'm loud, rambunctious, outgoing, but when it came to you, it was the slight things that made me fall for you. I can't start to fathom how you would have got your head around that. I guess there's really a recurring pattern here. It all kind of falls on me. It was my choices and the ways I decided to live that made these events unfold. And I'm sorry for that. It's weird though, having all of this time between then and now. You can think a whole lot, and I think I can pinpoint the exact moment that things hit the fan. We were walking just by the beach. It was a calm Saturday night, one of the quietest we'd had in a while. We were just hanging out with friends. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone liked everyone. It was a cool kind of feeling for some reason. We ended up in a part of town a bit removed from where we normally hang. I didn't really want to spook anyone, but I knew about the goings in this area when it got dark. I figured we'd be pretty safe. We were in the middle of summer, It was barely 6:30. I was wrong. I guess for some inexplicable reason they started their little functions a little early. I saw one of my old friends. Frankie, you see, we used to be pretty cool. We'd look after each other, fight for each other when it came to that. He cocked his head at me, and I noticed him and just awkwardly looked away. I knew he noticed me. I saw in my peripherals that his expression changed. He spat on the ground and went to talk off to another guy rather angrily. I should have done something about that, but I didn't. I guess I was too scared. Too scared to go back to what once was. Too scared to stick up for you guys. Too scared to do the right thing. Frustrations are hard to cope with. I couldn't ever tell you the whole story until now. It was about 2 weeks after I saw him that things started to change for our little group. I got a phone call, which I didn't tell anyone about. It was Frankie, just asking about how things were going. I knew he was holding out on something, so I managed to excuse myself before he dropped it. I know you sensed a change in my demeanor from there on out, and I know it worried you. I'm sorry that when you tried to ask about it, when you tried to help pull me through with it, that I snapped and said that nothing was wrong. To be honest with you, I was paranoid, and rightfully so. I noticed them around more. I couldn't directly recognize them, but I made the connection through their little brandiness, their piercings, the way their hair hung, the clothes they wore. I had an uneasy feeling about it all, and I guess in the end, I was right to have it. I'm just ashamed that I didn't do something about it sooner. Yet still I held out on it all. It took me a total of 43 days, 2 hours and 29 minutes for me to finally do something. Yeah, I counted. I strolled into their area, just as I had done so many times before. I was terrified of it all. Yet it seemed so familiar, so natural to me. Hardly anything had changed. The music was still blasting its chords through the lanes. The streets were still littered with junk. The houses were still in the same dismal state, and the sun still gave its eerie glow to the area. The only thing that could connect this place to human society was the trees, and that was for a good reason. You see, the trees truly represented the area. They were a pride of the people. They predated everyone there, and they'd grown strong and true. It had become a unanimous decision that they would be respected and cared for. I remember, when I was about 15, a guy from outside of town decided he'd try and use the tree as his own little canvas. It was a mistake, and he soon had about 20 people beating on him. He was incredibly lucky to get out alive, or unlucky depending on how you look at it. But hey, digression. I spotted Frankie rather quickly and kept pace until I met him out front of the old milk bar that we used to spend our time around. The next few moments scared me. I was straight up with him. I told him that I knew his boys were following me. I told him that there was a reason as to why I didn't pay any attention to him that night. And I told him that I didn't want anything to do with him, the area, or his people. I told him that I was done with it all, and he just laughed. I was scared, but as stubborn as ever I kept going, shouting at him, demanding an answer and a resolve. Coolly, he told me something to the effect of this: I don't care, we don't care you. We made your choices, and by doing so you've spat in our faces and upon the bark of our tree. I hope you enjoy yourself. I was frightened, so I ran. I felt his eyes bearing down upon me, but I refused to look back. It was pure cowardice on my part, and I wish I'd done things differently. I know things would have been different if I had. What scared me the most out of it all was the waiting. I was impatient during the gap, purely because I was waiting for something to hit. I should have just enjoyed the little I had while I could. I'm sure we both remember plenty about that night. I know I do at least. I remember that there was a storm brewing, and the smell it produced was so reinvigorating. I remember the feel of each little droplet of water crash down upon us from above. I remember the way you quivered after the first blast of thunder rang out. And over all of it, I remember the sly smile you gave me after you stuck your head up. After that bout of thunder, it's the little things like that which keep me sane. When they finally arrived, I was scared more for you than me, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that I let myself go mad like that. I'm sorry that I let you see that side of me. I'm sorry that that side of me exists. Though, as I fought the off, I felt nothing. I was numb, although I knew at the end that I would be met with a feeling that is only understood by those who relish the feeling of activities like that. It's called the rush. Basically, everything catches up with you. It lets you know that it was really all worth it. It takes your breath and feet away from you, but holds you up all the same. You feel as if you're flying above everyone. The fighting all came back to me so naturally. Despite me not fighting for at least 3 years, I was ready to block the first punch, and I knew to twist it behind his back. Dig out his knees and wrench it up, highly and elevate it while twisting it outwards, popping the shoulder. I knew to cut the next attack short by slamming my foot into his knee and following it up with an upwards knee, sending his teeth into the back of his throat. And finally, I knew to sidestep the nice swing and to throw him backwards, his head crashing into the rocks. However, I didn't know what to do as you stared at the 3 bodies at my feet with such a blank and pale face. I'm sorry that I didn't follow after you and try to explain as you ran off. I felt terrible, and rightfully so. I let things go spiraling. I couldn't function properly without you. My grades dropped by 15% overall. I got dropped from the hockey team because I kept messing up the simple stuff, and it was purely because I became so infatuated with those small things. They had become my last line of defense between sanity and lunacy, and now that they were gone, the madness was threatening to swallow me whole. I wish I could blame that lingering insanity as the sole reason as to why I went to your house, begging to see you, but I still don't know. I approached your house shaken and unsure of my every step, like the first time I ever took you out, and sure of what words to say to those I met. As I knocked on your door, hoping that you'd let me in, I looked around at where I was. Caught between a breath, I admired the flowers you had growing. I admired the gothic fence your parents had up, and I admired the slow pulse of the music you had playing in your room. I was soon greeted by the displeased face of your brother, and despite my strained efforts, I couldn't get through to him. I still don't know why I couldn't get through to him. He was always smart and thoughtful. I became more distressed as his anger levels rose, before it came to the point at which your brother struck me squarely in the mouth, knocking me from your porch. I could have blocked that punch. I could have hurt your brother badly. I could have forced my way in, but I didn't deserve to be in your presence at that time, and I deserved that blow. If you get the chance, thank him for that, and I still don't. I don't think I ever will, and I don't think I ever did. I guess we just grew apart a bit. Too quickly, we never spoke a word to one another. And that made me sad. To see so much just vanish hurt me. To know that I'd never receive your cute little I am set to in warning. or be spammed with your pokes hurt me. To know that you wouldn't be there to slap me over the back of the head whenever I said something, or to be the first person on field to congratulate me after a good win, hurt me. And to know that whenever I needed someone, that you would never be that person, and that I could never be that person for you, hurt me. But I guess that was how it's supposed to be. I went to a party the other night. It was pretty sweet. I felt happy. It was an kind of happy, but it felt good all the same. But I just know that something was missing. In the end, I guess writing this all out has helped me to an extent, but it pains me to know that you will never actually read this. I guess that's the real, morbid irony behind all of this. Oh well, sleep tight, autumn. These leaves will be reborn soon. The second story, the gambling debt. Sweat trickled down Marshall's back as he sat at his kitchen table, gripping his cards as they got wet with sweat. He didn't have a very good hand, and the bet had raised up to $15,000. Marshall started seeing stars, and he felt different parts of his body going numb. His lips were dry and his back was pulled. His opponent, Ron, a wealthy, professional gambler, was getting ready to win, and he had two thugs on either side of him in case Marshall tried anything smart. He noticed that Marshall was nervous and smiled a little. Ron was known to be a cruel gambler, and he had his terms on not paying your debt. $1,000 not paid meant an arm broken off. $2,000 meant an arm on the leg. $3,000 meant all your limbs. Who could imagine what 15 grand would bring? The end of the session neared, and both men flipped their cards over onto Marshall's table. Well, we seem to have a clear winner. That's 15 grand you owe me, said Ron plainly. He didn't seem surprised. The problem was, Marshall didn't have the money. He only had a small job of being a store clerk, and was paid $9 an hour. Just give me. You have 1 hour. Marshall couldn't keep himself standing. He stumbled and sat back down into his chair, feeling dizzy and light-headed. He started walking for the door, but no leaving the building. But let me tell you what, you can call someone to bring the money for you. Just no leaving, Ron said. Marshall started to take out his cell phone. He didn't have many friends. The thought of losing his limbs brought tears to his eyes. He would never be able to escape Ron's helpers. They would hunt him down and probably kill him. But that wasn't part of their agreement. Ron would torture and then leave you for the rats. He went through his contacts and stumbled across his ex, Claire, and called her number. Hello, Seaver residence. Who is this? It was Claire's father. It's me, Marshall. Can I talk to Claire? What's wrong with you, Marshall? I had high hopes, but then you made bad decisions and Claire left you. Fine, you can talk to her, but make it quick. What do you want, Marshall? It was Claire's voice. Claire, I need some help. I need you to help me pay a gambling debt. What the hell is wrong with you? This is the exact reason I left you, and now you want me to help you with this. Claire, please, I need the help, please. You hopeless pig. I'm not going to help you. You're on your own. And don't ever call us here again. Marshall was starting to cry. Claire. No, don't hang up. Please. But she was gone, and so was a part of Marshall's life. Marshall was looking through his contacts again. Tears dripping onto the floor. He saw his parents' number and dialed it as slow as he could, and they answered on the second ring. Marshall, So nice to hear from you again. What's the matter? His mother was cheery on the other end, and Marshall felt horrible for having to end that. Mom, I need some help. I need you to pay a gambling debt for me. His mother was silent, but eventually she spoke. Marshall, I'm amazed, and we thought you would change. We thought you had changed. I guess we were wrong. We thought you would go places when you were a kid, but you ended up being a low-life gambler. Mom, please. Look, Marshall, I'm sorry, but we can't help you anymore. You need to learn how to change. We already helped you twice in the past, and we aren't in any shape to do it again. We are both disappointed. We just wish we could have a better son. Mom, please. They're going to hurt me. Please, Mom. No. But she had already hung up, and Marshall was close to sobbing. Some tears already dried onto his face. Parents, they're tough. Which is why I killed mine. But you still have half an hour. Ron was making Marshall worry. His next thought was to call 911. They wouldn't allow torture, and would come in about 20 minutes. The idea brought a spark of hope into Marshall, but he would have to act fast. He dialed 911, and then faked for other numbers so it would look like a real number. 911. What is your emergency? Please bring $15,000 to apartment Holloway on Roseberry Road, room number 14. Sir, we do not accept prank calls on the emergency line, and you can be fined $1,000 and be placed in prison for up to 9 days. This isn't a prank call. I need to pay a gambling debt, or else they're going to hurt me. Who is going to hurt you? Ron. I'm sorry, but like I said, prank calls are not allowed on the emergency line. Marshall was hopeless. Won't happen again, Marshall said, close to tears. One of Ron's thugs grabbed Marshall's cell phone and threw it on the ground. Time's up. I see you don't have the money, Ron said with a hint of sarcasm. While talking, he sent his men to get Marshall, but he dodged them from the side and proceeded to run. Look, I'll do anything, I swear. Marshall was sobbing by then, and he couldn't hold it back. It's funny, said Ron. There was another lad who also said he's do anything. Remember him, boys? His men both nodded and chuckled. I told him to put his hand on his stove burner for a whole 10 seconds, and he only lasted 7, so we had to finish him off. You think you can do that? Marshall responded by putting his hands on his knees and vomiting onto the ground. Still clutching his stomach, he made his way to the burner. It was electric, and he turned it to the lowest setting. Turn it higher, said Ron, but it was already red hot, and he seemed satisfied. Marshall put his hand toward the burner, and immediately it started sweating. Hurry up. Ron was impatient. Marshall lowered his hand onto his stove, and the pain caught him by surprise. He couldn't breathe or scream, but it slowly came back to him. He could hear a repetitive popping sound coming from his hand, and he knew it was his hand, pure muscle and fat, sizzling and popping away. As Marshall screamed and started to feel his hand move lower, and it was melting away, and Marshall blacked out from the pain. He awoke to Ron's voice. Too bad, son. You only made 7 seconds. Marshall looked at his hand and there was a rough burned symbol of a coil, but it wasn't bleeding, it was blackened and horrifying. But tell you what, I'll give you another chance. The burner is still on. At the lowest setting, try again. But it's the last chance I'm giving. Marshall went back up to the stove, but could only stare at his hand, which was nothing like he'd imagined it to ever feel like or look like. He slammed his hand onto the burner, using his other hand, the normal one, to keep the burning one from coming off. The familiar popping sound came back, and so did the screaming. His hand was melting away. He could feel it, and he could see it. Liquid mass and fat was coming out of the coils in the burner and sizzling to nothing beside it. His hand stopped moving and melting, and he realized that it had reached his bone, and a rattled sound started up. Marshall heard Ron say's hand and tried to pull his hand away, but it was stuck, and he couldn't move either. His knees started buckling, his screams getting quieter, and he blacked out again. Someone splashed water onto his face, and he awoke to Ron staring at him. "We thought you were dead," said Ron. Marshall looked at his hand. He could make out a charred bone mass, and he could feel himself about to vomit again. As a form of compliment, "We called the police for you." Ron smiled. "But it's funny, Marshall, looking back at our agreement. It said nothing about turning the burner on." With that, Ron left Marshall's apartment to the sound of Marshall screaming and screaming until he could no longer. The third story, hunting ground, ultimately the home of freaks and perverts. There's one different category I forgot to mention there. Demons, well, want to be precise where to start. I'm assuming I don't have much time left before my computer fizzes out again, before I'm in the darkness again. So let's start at the beginning then. I was at my friend's house one day, Jed. A normal guy, just like me. We got bored after a while, so we decided to hop onto Omegle, a site I hadn't previously heard of. He said it was a random chat site, and that sometimes it could be really funny. I went with it. Anything could be better than sitting around in his dingy flat. So we went on, and I got the general idea of it. It basically just paired you up with a random person also on the site, and let you talk to them. We had some good conversations, some bad. After a while, we bumped into one that really caught my attention. It was strange because, well, it just was anyway. Basically, it just reversed the meaning of everything we typed. We typed hello. It typed goodbye. It really wasn't anything special. Then just as we were about to disconnect, it said, "I like your poster. I saw them once, have you?" This shocked us. The poster behind us was Linkin Park. Nothing special, but we weren't on cam, so there is no way he could have seen what was in Jed's room. We didn't type anything for a few minutes, trying to work out how he's been able to see. Did he hack the site? Was it a lucky guess? A burnt room? We decided to ask him. His only answer was look. Great. We've stumbled onto a lunatic. We decided the best thing was to disconnect. He typed one more thing before we did. My room's H-O-T, whatever. We thought just another stranger. Next, we decided to try out the video option. Now we could see who we were talking to, and they could see us. It took forever to connect to the server, and when it finally did, our heart rates increased rapidly. From the stranger's camera, all that was visible was a burnt room. Strange, we thought we disconnected, but it threw us back into the same person. Although person wasn't exactly the best word this time. A door was open. The room had before just looked like a box, with items to burn to identify, but now we could see the room was at the end of a long corridor, with what like stairs at the end of the hall. Once again, we disconnected and tried to get someone different. We failed, swung back to the same thing. But this time there was a figure at the end of the hall. Shivers went down our spines as we drew closer to the screen. The figure didn't seem to be doing anything, just looking down the hall. It looked humanoid in shape, but the head looked different from a human's, and the arms seemed to be hanging at an unnatural angle. At first, we didn't see any connection with our earlier acquaintance. It was Jed who made the link first. He nearly yelled his thoughts. I told him there was a difference between hot and burnt, and we disconnected again. There was no escape though. Thrown back into the same thing, another change. The figure was closer, as if it had stumbled forwards in the short time we had left it. I told Jed I wasn't happy, and that we should leave the site. He insisted we find out what the figure would do. He thought we had found a prankster who was hacking our computer so that we would return to him. He was so terribly wrong. He started disconnecting and reconnecting at a faster rate. The figure now moving closer and closer to the room. I grabbed his hand before he could click it one last time. The figure was now in the burnt room, over in a corner. The darkness of the room shielded the face and body, but we could see the figure was clearly not well. Its arms looked broken, legs slouching. I estimated that one more click and we would be able to see its face. I told Jed this, and he was more than eager to do it. I, however, was frightened by now, and wanted to leave the site and never return. He agreed, and closed the web browser. I left, hoping this would be the end of it. I was wrong. A couple of weeks later, Jed was involved in a terrible accident. His flat had suffered a fire from an unknown source. The police were baffled. The body was never found, and I doubt it ever will be. Naturally, the whole area was blocked from the public, but I needed to get inside, so one night, when the police were tired and less likely to notice, I ran to a path Jed had shown me. It was small and cramped, but out of view from the patrolling officers. It got me close enough to the entrance so that I could slip in and out without getting noticed. Walking down the halls to his flat was so strange. There was a feel of discovery in the air, tinted by something indescribable. I quickly reached his room. Most of the items had been removed by the police. Anything that was left had a small imprint indicating the police needed to take it. The room was burnt. Navigating it was strange. Not so long ago, I'd been in this room laughing and joking. Now look at it. One of the items left was his laptop. Wasting no time, I booted it up and instantly went online to look at his history. Last site he was ever on, Omegle. I turned to run, but a stench in the air stopped me. I looked out of the room to see a figure stumbling down the hall. Just as I thought, it was singing in a low tone. The words I can't be sure of, but as a best guess. Burnt is cold, burnt is hot. Hell on earth, as I like to call it. Stupid boy thinks he's safe. On the internet, of all the places, stupid people giving me a new hunting ground. More prey, without a doubt. Stupid humans think they're safe. From there on was inaudible. I could feel it getting closer. Every noise it made, the banging, the sickening laughter. I decided I would run, push it out of the way, escape. I came from the behind the charred door, and the sight appalled me. It's too disgusting to describe, like a sum of hatred thrown into one person. Horribly formed, like a baby trying to perform brain surgery. I screamed, it laughed. I ran. I tripped. I got away. I won't be alive for much longer. I can hear it now, affecting everything in my house. It has a weird effect on electricity it can't be for. Laughing, it knows which one of us is going to win. There's no point fighting. At least I'll know what happened to Jed. My time's running out. Avoid the Omega at all costs. Go there at your own risk, or else you might come face to face with him, the hunter.